Hey everybody, and welcome to Katpult Cloud, the virtual edition of the Katpult Future Fest. My name is Kasper Björkborg, and it's amazing to be here finally live with all of you guys. And with me on my screen share here, I have my colleague Alison Fort. Alison, how are you doing this morning?
All good, thanks, Kasper.
I'm going to leave you here on the stage for a few minutes to kick off the event, and I'll see you again soon.
Thank you. So welcome to the Katpult Clouds. I get the privilege of kicking off today's proceedings and welcome you all here with us. Last year, I welcomed many of you to the Investor Day at the Katpult Future Fest, in a venue very different to today, in a time very different to today. Last year, we were all together in a music venue in the center of Oslo. I came in with my ear mic, feeling very much like I was getting my Madonna moment. And today, I'm alone. I'm talking to a screen in my bedroom. And the world has changed. The world went into lockdown. Over 100 countries went into full or partial lockdown. We've now lost over 315,000 people to the coronavirus. And the world economy is expected to shrink by 3%. Like many of you, this has been a roller coaster of a few months for me personally. I've wrestled with feelings of fear and frustration. I cried when I took my daughter out of school. I got sick, so I isolated, and for the first time ever, really felt afraid for my health and the health of my family, especially my parents. And I looked around and have been confused and haven't known how to sort of deal with the uncertainty that we're surrounded by. But at the same time, I'm sure like many of you, we've had some beautiful moments. I feel incredibly lucky that I'm surrounded by my loved ones and we've had time to pause and reflect, enjoy our time together. I live in the beautiful countryside, thankfully, and we've been able to watch Mother Nature emerge into spring, see the beauty of spring without the sights and sounds of the airplanes flying overhead. So I'm filled with questions. I don't know sort of what the future is going to hold. And that sort of feeling of sort of trepidation and sort of worry and uncertainty is with me every day. But what I do know is that in 2019, we were already talking about a $2.5 trillion financing gap to meet the UN SDGs. And as we've gone into lockdown, those sustainable development goals have not gone away. Climate change is still with us. Billions of people still don't have access to good healthcare, good education. And in fact, sort of in COVID-19, the reports are showing that for the first time in 3 decades, global poverty is on the rise, and more than 8% of humanity is poverty. So for all I'm filled with these questions and I'm wondering what the future will hold and I'm frightened by it, I personally feel that this is not the time to hide here in my bedroom. This is not the time to retreat and be alone with that fear and that uncertainty, but rather to join with all of you. The Katpult Future Fest has always been an uplifting time of year for me, coming to Oslo, being together with you all, the change makers, the impact investors, the tech founders that are using technology, capital, business, and consciousness as levers for change towards a planet that is more equitable and sustainable. So we invite you here today to come on this wonderful journey and to continue this journey with us into the cloud, the Katpult Cloud. It is an experiment. We have been incredibly ambitious in going out with a 12-hour program with now over 600 registrants on a new platform. So we don't know what the world is going to bring, and there is definitely some uncertainty about what today is going to bring. But like every Katpult Future Fest, I am sure that you will sort of all engage, and today we will meet some new friends. We will go on adventures together. The program is filled with some phenomenal contributors on the stage and in the sessions that are sharing their time to give us opportunities to probe, to ask questions. So enjoy. lean in. The future is one. I hope you feel like me, that this is not the time to sit back, and that we can go into the future from a position of humility and unity. So I'm going to welcome Casper back, and he's going to give us some hints and tips and tricks about how to get the most out of today in the Katpult Cloud.
Thank you. Yeah, this really is one big experiment, as you said. So let's make sure to treat it like one. I want you to be curious, open-minded, test new things, push as many buttons in there as you can. And if you get stuck, just refresh your browser. That normally helps. Speaking of browser, also use Chrome. We figured out that that is definitely the one that works best with this hop-in platform. And if you can't figure out what to do, go to our Expo section where we have set up a help desk. In there, we can answer all of your questions. You can also look out for our little cloud buddies. They have a little pink icon as their profile image, and they're here to help you. So the Katpult Future Fest is like a beautiful chaos by design in some way. And I really hope that this will be the same, this experience. We will have presentations kicking off from this main stage on the top and the bottom of the hour through most of the day. And the main stage presentations will be followed by Q&A in the sessions section. In the sessions, you can find 50+ sessions to join during the day. And you will also find a bar to hang out in, a few dinner and lunch sessions if you want to share a meal with some new or old friends. Or you can even initiate your own sessions and invite people for a talk or conversation during the event. Also make sure to check out all the booths in the expo area and test out our networking feature in the menu bar to your left. Another great way to connect with people during the event is to use the chat to your right. Here you can toggle between an event-wide chat and a session chat specific for whatever stage or session you're in at the moment. You can also send direct messages to people or invite them to a video call with you. If you maybe want to give Tarald Nusta late congratulations on the Norwegian National Day, or you want to explain to Larry Brilliant how a pandemic really works, just hit him up. So basically, all the same principles rule this event as most events in life. Be curious, talk to people, keep an open mind, speak from the heart, and if you get stuck, refresh your browser. And I think that's about all you need to know about the platform that we're in. We are ready to kick this off. And Alison, I'm going to leave it to you to introduce our first keynote speaker here on the main stage.
Thanks, Casper. So when we launched into the Katpult Cloud, I had the privilege of being able to go back to John Elkington, who I've been talking with for over 12 months now about the Katpult Future Fest and how we would be privileged if John would come and share some of his thoughts, his work, his decades of experience with us. But of course, he was double booked for May 18th, which was the day we were originally talking about. But once we moved into the cloud, opportunities arose. And so we now have John with us. And he sort of agreed to go on this journey with us and to test and to be the first one to open and to see if opening the SlideShare works on the Katpult Cloud. So thank you, John. John, for those of you that don't know him, he has been dubbed as the godfather of sustainability. He has worked with many sort of leading companies all over the world. And he originally sort of coined the phrase, the triple bottom line, which he then recalled with a feeling that it didn't sort of express the urgency and the need of what we're facing today. So his latest book, Green Swans, which I urge you to pick up a copy of, looks at capitalism and goes deep into the capitalism that we need for the current times, regenerative capitalism. And it talks about the green swans that are going to bring us into a brighter future. So I'm going to hand to John and he can tell us more. But thank you, John, for being with us. I'm so pleased to have you here with us on the Katpult Cloud kicking off today.
Well, thank you, Alison, and hello, everyone. It's genuinely an immense pleasure and privilege to be able to make it. As you said, it's really been a roller coaster, I think, for pretty much all of us. And I think Casper just said that this is going to be something like a beautiful chaos fest. That's where I'm probably happiest. In fact, one of my favorite Kurt Vonnegut quotations says that you've just got to keep jumping off cliff edges and hoping that you grow your wings on the way down. And that's, I think, where we all are. But oddly, I feel immensely excited at the moment. These are extraordinarily challenging times. But I feel the potential for driving change exponentially and systemically is far greater now than it has been throughout my working career. So what I'd like to do is just take people through a 15-minute slide presentation, then hand back to you, Alison, and then we have a Q&A session, which I'm very much looking forward to. So if you're happy with that.
I certainly am. So I will leave you to it, and we'll go through the screen share for the first time. Good luck. I'm sure it'll be fine.
Good luck to us all.
I'll come back and find you in 15 minutes.
So now this is just goes into present mode, and we should be off. So the first thing is I'm just reminding us, those of us who are not in Oslo at the moment, what that glorious city looks like. It's one of my very favorite in the world, and I'm missing it already. I just wanted to say not only thank you to the Katpult Cloud team, but also to the people who've made this possible in a variety of ways. So I'm now going to start. And my theme is broadly regenerative capitalism, and I'll explain what I mean by that and why I think there is a coming boom in that style of capitalism. Nothing guaranteed. We're going to have to fight for it, work for it over years and decades. And the title of the presentation, as Alison has mentioned, is The Green Swan, or Green Swans. That book came out on April the 7th through Fast Company Press. And just as a little bit of background for those who don't know me, I was 70 last year, so I'm a baby boomer. Oddly, at a time when many of my colleagues are thinking about retiring, I'm actually just beginning to feel that I might have some sense of what I'm here on this planet to do. Over the years, I've set up 4 social businesses since 1978. They all still exist. I've been on 70 plus boards and advisory boards. And this is my 20th book. So I'm still trying to work out what I'm going to do when I grow up, but that's a little bit of background. And one of the themes in the book, beyond black swans and green swans, is the notion of the ugly duckling, something that is seriously weird, looks ridiculous, is in today's world already, but we struggle to understand quite what we're seeing. And when I think about the Katpult network and platform, that's what I'm most excited about, that one of the things you're doing is convening some of those early stage ugly ducklings, if I may, and some of the people who are going to not just drive them, but support them, invest in them, and so on. So I'm immensely excited to be part of all of this. I'm also excited because as one looks around the world at the moment, one sees all sorts of rising examples of business people trying to embrace the change agenda. And a couple of days ago, somebody sent me a link to the Houdini website in Sweden. Now, many people on this call will know that they're a sportswear company, a bit like Patagonia, significantly smaller for the moment. But the thing I loved about Houdini was the way in which they're embracing the Half Earth project, the idea that over the next decades, we would give back half of this planet of ours to nature. Now, that's the scale of ambition, which I think increasingly we all need to embrace. But I've sort of taken the 3 themes of this year's virtual event, and I'm just going to give you a couple of quick thoughts on each of them. The first one clearly here is consciousness. And we all know how difficult it is for the human brain to see exponential trajectories when they start to bubble up all around us. And that's exactly where we are today. I think we've called the 2020s the exponential decade because bad things are going exponential, but good things can do as well. The difference is that many of the black swan sort of negative exponentials are accidental, whereas the green swans, positive exponentials, we really have to work for. And one of the things we're doing today, and we've got an expo booth in which we'll be doing this, is launching a Green Swans observatory. And we've got a beta version of a map that we've been working on, just plotting some of the things that we're doing. But over time, we want to populate that map with examples of people doing extraordinary things around the world, and see very much Katpult as a strategic partner in all of that. I said that we struggle to think about exponential trends, and everyone in this event will have seen, if not this diagram, ones like it. This is 400,000 years of our collective history. And what it shows is there is this wild excursion going on at the moment in terms of the carbon content of our atmosphere. Our brains really, really struggle to get themselves around this thought. Now, clearly, it punches into our reality with an increasing frequency. So it's floods and it's droughts and it's fires and it's floods of refugees. And I think very likely we'll see that growing in intensity over time. Now, the Sustainable Development Goals been mentioned by Alison. No, I love them to pieces like everyone else, but I think there's been a fundamental misunderstanding of what those goals potentially represent. And yes, there's a big funding gap, but I think many of the businesses that we've seen try to embrace the goals are thinking about incremental change. Let's be a little bit more transparent, a little bit nicer, get our products and services out to rather more people than would otherwise be able to afford them. Well, that's all very nice and that's all very necessary on the journey, but what the goals are, and you just look at the first two, no poverty and zero hunger by 2030, those are exponential goals. And I don't think most of us have yet woken up to that fact, and we need to. And many years ago, something just over 25 years ago, I came up, as Alison mentioned, with the triple bottom line. And this was a diagram I got the Financial Times cartoonist Ingram Pin to do at that time. And it showed an icon of the natural world, an icon of the poor and dispossessed around the world. And slightly as a joke, it shows a robot. And that was about the long-term future. It's less of a joke than it once would have been, because as many people will know, the first robot or expert system was appointed to a board in Hong Kong in 2014. So what was a joke is turning out to be something rather different. Expert systems are going to populate the world's boardrooms over time. But 2 years ago, I withdrew. I did a product recall of the triple bottom line. The Harvard Business Review, which published the recall, said it was the first time in their knowledge that a management concept had been recalled. The overwhelming response was, thank God, nothing wrong with the intrinsic concept, but it's not enough to take us where we now need to go. It's not up to the nature and scale of the challenges that we face. So we've been really knocking our heads against walls since, trying to think, well, if not that, what? And really what's begun to dawn on us is that, as people have been saying, there's nothing intrinsically wrong about thinking about economic, social, and environmental value added or destroyed, which is the original intent of the triple bottom line, people, planet, profit. But the focus of most of that effort, all worthy and all necessary, as I've said, but the focus of that effort has been on responsibility. How can business, how can financial markets, how can, to some degree, governments become more responsible? And that's often defined locally or through supply chains, but we should be thinking about intergenerational responsibility as well. That's not enough. And I think what we've seen with COVID-19 is a ferocious demonstration of the fact that the global reality in which we all live is actually rather different from the one that we have been taught to believe in and think that we're experiencing. So resilience, which I first heard used in the current sense about 15 years ago on the lawns of the World Economic Forum, with a couple of consultants saying resilience was going to overturn sustainability. Well, maybe, but I don't think so. I think sustainability is an emergent property of a system. Resilience is a contributor to that. So we're hearing people talking about how do we get our economies to be more resilient, how to get our societies and communities to be more resilient, and critically, how do we get the biosphere, the natural world, to be more resilient over time? And the only way to do that is over the long haul is to regenerate those systems, to really invest in making them healthier, And that's why there is this now 3-stage sequence. But it's no accident that once again, those 3 R's are on an exponential curve. It's going to be tough enough to get to building in even standard forms of resilience into the systems on which we depend. But to move towards regeneration, which I think is the ultimate spirit and goal of sustainability, is going to be a bigger step entirely. I find it immensely exciting. I look at what's happening, for example, in China with the sponge cities. There are over 30 of them now. Wuhan, actually, where the COVID-19 crisis sort of originated, at least so we're told, is one of those sponge cities. So now being designed so that they soak up high tides, floods, and so on, the sorts of inevitable shocks, sadly, that will come with the climate emergency. But once you start in that direction, you start to get into biodiversity and a bunch of other things. And that becomes actually quite exciting. Now, I think exponential technology, which very much a theme of what Katpult does, will be central to our deliberations over the next couple of days and what happens over the next few decades. Most of you will have seen this sort of diagram. This one is done by Ramez Nam, who is an energy analyst and science fiction author. I love the way his brain works. In 2010, he went right out on a limb, predicted some fairly radical shifts in the energy mix, and even he turned out to be rather conservative. So these are his longer term forecasts out to 2050. And what you actually see, the gray band, is the operating cost ranges of fossil power plants that are already built and operating. And what we can see is renewables going down towards the almost free zone. Well, I doubt they'll ever quite get there. But what you see in that diagram, or at least what I think I see in that diagram, is a coming energy disruption, which is off the scale greater than most people are currently imagining. And I'm just reading this morning in the Financial Times about the American coal industry and how jobs have been lost at a ferocious rate there because of COVID-19, but also because of the structural shift in energy markets. Now, none of this is going to be easy. None of this is going to be painless. It's creative destruction, and that is always almost existentially upsetting for people who are deeply invested in the old order. Now, I'm looking around the world as part of this new observatory platform, trying to find particularly companies of all scales, sizes and scales, that are doing interesting work into the circular economy, into this sort of green swan territory, if you like. And one of the ones I came across through Joel Makawa of Greenbiz just a week or so ago was Eastman. It used to be Eastman. Kodak has been a case study on how not to run a business, or how to run a business into the ground. But what Eastman now are doing are developing 2 technologies which promise to take any plastic in the world, break them down to the molecular level, and then build them back up to useful materials. Now, we may disagree on whether plastics have a role in the future. I think they probably do. And if we're going to have them, then they've got to go in circles at a much, much more energetic rate. Another sector that I'm fascinated by, I've been in vertical farms under my own city of London and an old subway station. I took this photograph outside Montreal. I think vertical farming is a fascinating sector. Now, there are many downsides. I mean, it can be energy intensive, although if you've got abundant renewable energy, that may not be a problem. Which is certainly true in the Gulf states. And some of you may have seen Emirates, the airline, and Dubai going into a partnership to produce, I think, or to develop the biggest vertical farm in the world. And the critical element for me is in water-stressed areas, vertical farming in this particular configuration is seen to be about 99% more water efficient than anything else that exists. So not perfect, none of these things are perfect, but these are the sorts of breakthrough options we're looking for. So finally, third theme, capital, largely defined by most of us as money, but one of the interesting things in recent years has been the way in which multiple capitals have proliferated, and also this extraordinary shift in mood and sentiment in the last year to 18 months. This was a banner headline early last year. Many of you will have seen it on the Financial Times, basically challenging capitalism as it's currently configured and saying we're headed into a period where things are going to change and quite profoundly. And you've had people like Mark Benioff, CEO of Salesforce, basically saying capitalism is broken. Warren Buffett saying, well, maybe, but companies, business cannot do all of this on its own. We need governments to get much more actively involved. And I believe that's true. But behind the scenes, I did a podcast about 2 weeks ago with the Global Impact Investment Network, GIN, and it's astonishing to see how that sector of our economy, from a standing start pretty much, has now sort of exceeded $500 billion dollars a year, depending on how you calculate these things. But some quite large numbers involved. Actually, no, I think it must be a million. I must check my numbers. But I love the GIN. I love what impact investors are doing. But there is now a huge challenge to get what they're doing, largely on the fringes of the system, into the mainstream. Towards a conclusion, this is a diagram I've been using for about 2.5 years now. And it's basically suggesting that we're in a period where an old system comes apart, and it has to come apart, because for as long as that old system, which is unsustainable, operates, there's a limit to how far we can build the new one. The problem is, every time this happens, and it perhaps happens every 70 to 80 years, you suddenly find yourself headed towards a period where people become anxious, confused, fearful, and increasingly angry. Now, as it happens, COVID-19 was not uppermost in my mind when I sort of started to sketch these trajectories, but it's certainly accelerated that set of trends. Now, the reason I'm optimistic is I think the time is absolutely extraordinarily appropriate now and open to new and systemic solutions. And we've got to be very careful as we go through all of that. Last time I was in Norway, I was very impressed by the sheer number of Teslas on the road. But everyone driving a Tesla may not actually be the best way forward for sustainable mobility. So we've got to be careful of not to be seduced by the most glittering technology. And this is my last slide, and it's just to make a couple of concluding points. We've just finished a piece of work shown on the left for the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, and it's on the consequences of COVID-19, particularly for business and for markets, but more broadly as well. And my colleague Richard Roberts largely led that work, and I'm very proud of it. It launched last week. But on the right, the diagram, the waves diagram, you see a piece of work that we've been developing with a number of companies and one regulatory authority now. This is based on Bill Sharp's work, the Three Horizons model. And what we've been doing is gradually populating, and I can see one typo in there, but the three waves. And the first wave is the world in which we've grown up, which is starting to fade, and is the world, if you like, of the responsibility agenda. The third horizon, the future one, is about regeneration, at least in my mind. And in the middle, you have where we're increasingly moving collectively, which is into the transition period. And that's the world of an increased emphasis on resilience. But as I said earlier on, the only way I believe we can get to true long-term resilience is to regenerate the economic, the social, and the environmental systems on which our lives ultimately depend. And I put the Half Earth Project logo back there, which E.O. Wilson helped inspire, because again, just to underscore that closing point, we've got to dream, but we've got to dream really big, and we can best do that when we do it collectively. So that's one of the critical reasons why I'm so pleased to be involved in this Katpult Cloud session. So back to you, Alison, and I hope to see at least some of you for the Q&A session a little later on this morning.
Thank you, John. Perfect way for us to start, diving right into all of our themes, all of our topics, and with lots of optimism thrown in. So that's what we need sort of on the morning of an event such as this. as John said, we will be moving to a session room, which will kick off at the next top of the hour. So we're going to sort of make our way over there via sort of a little coffee break. So I'm sure, you know, we need to do virtual coffee breaks. We've been joking, we don't have croissants and cups of tea in the green room for everybody. So please sort of everybody take a coffee break or hop into a session. And those of you that want to come and join John and I, we'll be there at the top of the hour, and the program on the main stage here will continue at the bottom of the hour. Thank you.